Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third webinar of our webinar series, Synergy Sparks. The Faculty of Education of Lyceum campus proudly presents a series of webinars focusing on various topics on diverse aspects of education. This is the very first experience of the Faculty of Education of Lyceum campus in organizing an educational webinar series. The aim of this webinar series is to actively engage in academic initiatives to foster closer ties with the community. I'm Sandhya Udwana, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. Since its inception in 2022, the campus has consistently engaged in a variety of academic events to uphold and enhance its academic excellence. This webinar series represents a strategic addition to these initiatives, serving as a valuable enhancement to our educational offerings. So before we begin, just a few points for you to remember. If you have any technical issues, feel free to use the chat feature to reach out to our tech support team. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available for your viewing afterward. We'll have a Q&A session at the end, so please submit your questions using the chat feature. Talking about the speaker for today, I'm sure Devi Balika Vidyalaya would be proud to see how far she has come in terms of her career. To introduce more about her, I would like to formally invite Dr. Sarath Pereira, Dean, Faculty of Education, Lyceum Campus, to give a formal introduction about our speaker for today. Over to you, Dr. Sarath.
Thank you, Sandhuni. As the Dean of the Faculty of Education of the Lyceum Campus, Sri Lanka, I am extremely honored to introduce our esteemed speaker for today's session, Professor Gatsayuri Neelika Malavige. Professor Malavige is a distinguished Sri Lankan academic, university professor, researcher, and scientist. She currently serves as the head and professor at the Department of Immunology and Molecular Sciences at the University of Sri Jayawardenepura, Faculty of Medical Sciences, a position she has held since 2020. Additionally, she has been a visiting lecturer at the University of Oxford since 2008. Professor Malavige's academic journey is both inspiring and illustrious. She graduated with the MBBS from the University of Colombo in 2000 and pursued her doctoral studies at the MRC with the All Institute of Molecular Medicine at the University of Oxford, earning a doctorate of philosophy in 2008 through a Commonwealth Scholarship. Her dedication to the field of medicine is further highlighted by her membership and fellowship of the Royal College of Physicians and Pathologists of the United Kingdom. As the director of the Center for Dengue Research at the University of Sri Jayawardenepura since 2012, Professor Malavige has made significant contribution to the study of dengue. Her research focuses on identifying therapeutic targets, mediators of vascular leaks, the role of antibodies in disease pathogenesis, and correlates of protections in dengue. Her leadership in this field is further recognized through her role as the head of the Dengue Global Program and Scientific Affairs at DNDI. Throughout her career, Professor Malavige has held numerous prestigious positions and received several accolades, including the Joseph Nallaya Arumugam Memorial Awards, the S.C. Paul Oration, and Gold Medal from the Sri Lanka Medical Association, the Third World Academy of Science Young Scientist Award, and the Inspirational Woman Awards for her research on COVID-19. Professor Malavige is an active member of several prominent organizations, such as the British Society of Immunology, the Sri Lanka College of Physicians, the Sri Lanka Medical Association, the European Academy of Allergy and Clinical Immunology, the International Society of Infectious Diseases, and the American Society of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene. She has also played a pivotal role in the global fight against COVID-19, contributing to the identification and analysis of new variants and strains, and serving on the Executive Committee of the International Society for Infectious Diseases. We are truly privileged to have Professor Neelika Malavige with us today. Without further ado, We invite Professor Malavige to commence the session. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you so much for inviting me today, especially Chapa Belagedara, who is one of my school friends, and it is on Chapa's invitation that I'm speaking to. So thank you so much, Chapa. I'm most honored to be here. Let me share my screen. I hope everybody can see the screen. Can somebody say if it's
Yes, Professor.
Okay, thank you. All right, so what I was asked to speak about is why research and innovation is important, something that is very much lacking in Sri Lanka. So over over the time that I've been asked to speak, I hope I can just answer this question, if some of you don't know, whether research and innovation is required for economic growth. I think all of us know how important the economy is and economic growth is after what we went through and still are going through. Okay, I mean the really bad period is over, but you see we are not out of the woods. And but is research and innovation important? And I think it's no secret that Sri Lanka is lagging behind. But the important question is, why have we been lagging behind? Because if we don't understand why we have been lagging behind, then we won't be able to find solutions to understand what we can do about it. Now, these are just some of the pictures of South Korea. In the 1960s, like earlier, if you speak to older people, when they say Korea, you see, so in Sinhala, that means a very underdeveloped, area, a slum-like area, because that's what South Korea was in the 1960s. But now, Korea is a very well-developed country, a high-income country, and so how did Korea develop? The journey over 50 years from the 1960s to what it is today, it's nothing but due to development of science and technology. Now, I think another country is Singapore. Of course, in the 1960s, late 1960s, Sri Lanka was ahead of Singapore economically. Sri Lanka was better, but somehow, Singapore went down a particular pathway to be a very developed country, whereas we are where we are right now. I know we Sri Lankans have a tendency to blame everybody else but ourselves. You see, so when something goes wrong, you can always find fault with somebody else. But I'm not here to talk about what things that others haven't done. But what I'm here to say is what we could be doing to change this ourselves. Because if we don't do things ourselves to change things, I mean, nobody can change it unless we do. So coming to answer this question, okay, let me, wait, I just want to make it smaller. Let me, what's this? Yeah, that's better. So to understand what makes a country a developed country and how do we get there, so there's a thing called the Global Innovation Index. In other words, how innovative a country is. Here, this is in 2022, the Global Innovation Index in 2022. So the higher the index a country has, the more developed it is. And you can see the number one countries have the highest global innovation index is Switzerland, US, Sweden, all these things, and India is far ahead of us. I mean, India is 36.6, Sri Lanka is 24.2, and of course, many African countries are in like 14, 16, and so on. But all other Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries, are far ahead of us. India is far ahead of us. As Saudi Arabia, Middle East countries are far ahead of us, and Latin America is again ahead of us. So we are lagging in the Global Innovation Index. And why is this? So if you look at the Global Innovation Index in 2023, Sri Lanka is in the 90th position among 132 economies. Okay, so and of course, how can we compete with high-income countries? We are a lower middle-income country. We don't have the resources. But if we look at the lower middle-income country economies, we are in the 13th position and in the 6th position among the 10 economies in Central and Southeast Asia. But what are we good at and what are we not good at? So if you look at, not that we are very good at these things, but comparatively, we are okay, not okay, but of the things we are slightly better than other countries in South Asia is business sophistication, knowledge, and technology outputs. But what we really are lowest is in the institutions, human capital and research, and market sophistication. So I'll just tell you what that means. So, I mean, everybody, I think if you ask anybody who is listening in, we are lagging behind science and technology. So why is this? Is it because of lack of infrastructure? Is it because limited funding for research? Because after all, a very small proportion of the GDP of Sri Lanka is allocated for research. Is it limited to human resources, which is numbers and expertise? But here, I am mainly here to, as I mentioned earlier, there's a huge role that we ourselves can change, and it's about that. So coming to where we most lag behind, I mean, yes, we lag behind infrastructure, but we are, if you look at the indices of our infrastructure, we are ahead of most countries, like the mean, above the mean in Central and Southern area and in low-income countries. Institutions, we are a little bit lagging behind as far as institutions, but the indices that we are really lagging behind is human capital and research. So it's the human resources that we are really, really lagging behind, and that gives the lowest value. And human resources or the knowledge about research makes a huge difference in these things. Now, coming to the first question, do we lag behind research and innovation because we lack research institutions in Sri Lanka? So I have just put some pictures of some of the research institutions we have. We have Coconut Research Institute, Sri Lanka Rubber Research Institute, Tea Research Institute, Ceylon Strategic Research Institute, Arthur C. Clarke Center, Food Research Unit, SlimTech. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on. I mean, we do have a large number of institutions. Now, if I stop here right now and ask the audience, okay, can you come up with the main research outputs from these institutions that have led to development of Sri Lanka? Can anybody enlighten me? Okay, I won't put anybody in difficulty, but I think, I mean, some of them have, done very important things, but I'm just generalizing. We do have a lot of institutions, but the output of these institutions have not been very satisfactory. So why is this? Now, this is unfortunately, so I'm just, I hope I won't offend anybody during my discussion today, but simply, if you look at our education system, school and university basically kill innovation and research. And the main question is, what can we do about it? Because when we have kids coming into school, we have so many kids with different ideas, different capacities, different strengths. But what we want to do is churn them out into a particular mold or robots, as we may put it, to so that they cannot think, but actually can churn out information or do things on command. Because we, in our schools, what we do is we teach students, and even in universities, we teach students to answer questions to get the mark. We do not teach students to think. And also, especially in schools, because of what people, schools try to do is to have very strict discipline to make sure that they follow a particular path and excel in studies. But actually, because of the way kids are disciplined, again, there is very much limitation in freedom and ability to think. Rather than putting out because of these extreme discipline or the discipline in an altered way, which is not the right type of discipline, we actually stop the skills that are important for development. So I will explain. So if you look at Sri Lanka, okay, if you go anywhere or talk to anybody, what are the things that are valued in Sri Lanka? Okay, in school, what is valued is becoming first in the class. Okay, so one thing that any school going kid people ask is, okay, what is your class position? How much marks did you get for different subjects? Okay, so that this is something that is asked over and over from school kids. And if you look at the time spent between school and university, or school, or in the school holidays, or like from O level to A level, we have lots of school holidays, and time between school and university. What people in Sri Lanka do things like computer courses, language courses, various different type of courses, diplomas, and they keep on collecting certificates and qualifications. Okay, so in other words, by the time they enter university, or even in university, people do all these courses, diplomas, various courses, and collect so many certificates and qualifications. So they have a pile of all these things, qualifications and certificates, by the time they get out of university. And again, in university and higher education, it's about getting highest marks and masters and so on. So the important question here is, do any of these above characteristics indicate how well a person can perform in real life? How well a person can apply knowledge? How well a person can think? How creative one is? Because after all, now, when you go on to work or do something, what is it that really matters? So, I mean, I could go on and on. What are the important things in somebody being leading to personal success? So I'll come to how this applies to research, but I'm talking about personal success here, because after all, many parents, many teachers try to make students do all that, or sometimes you try to pursue those yourselves, thinking that those are the important things, being, getting a particular position in class, collecting all these certificates, and that those are the things that would make you successful in your careers, because after all, that's what people want. But unfortunately, the world was different. The world has changed, and these type of things don't give you the main skills needed for success. Okay, so it's not the paper qualifications, but what are needed is things like, so I have listed here, for instance, communication. So just by getting paper qualifications, all these competitiveness, rote learning, where you churn out answers without just understanding, and this is they are in all schools in Sri Lanka. So we have government schools, we have private schools, we have international schools, and I can tell you, it's just they are ingrained in all the education systems, simply because how people tend to think. Communication. So when you say communication, it doesn't mean getting on a stage and speaking. It means communicating your ideas to the other person, so the other person understands you very well. Problem solving skills, teamwork. So teamwork is something that is really lagging. And if you look at any product, any scientific discovery, anything in the world, no individual person can do it by themselves. So when we have more and more AI derived, things coming up, there's everybody's talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and how all these machines are taking over human jobs. The things that I have listed here can never be replaced by machines. Machines can't do teamwork. Problem solving, yes, but for initiation, you need humans, analytical thinking to application, leadership, adaptability, detail to orientation. And especially in the current world, and especially in the future world, it is these skills that are really important for innovation, research, and personal development and development of the country. So, will the Sri Lankan values in education help one to succeed in the current and future world? So, actually, no one cares how much marks you got. If you were in top of the class or how many certificates you have. Of course, during my introduction to this webinar, I was introduced as, having, graduated from Colombo with this and these, like certain gold medals and things, first class and so on, that I have got these fellowships and so on. So this is the usual way, and thank you for that introduction. But you see, this is the usual way that in Sri Lanka, people would be introducing you, like based on the qualifications you have, your achievements, and so on. But I have spoken in many international webinars and actually in person in international conferences. And when I speak in other countries, I am not introduced by what I did in university, my marks, my qualifications. Nobody cares about those things. What people, and it's not just about me, nobody introduces anybody else based on, like their so-called achievements in the context of all these qualification and certificates. What matters is what you have done. So when I am being introduced elsewhere outside Sri Lanka, I am introduced on the things that I have done. And after a particular age, especially when you come to my age, and you don't have anything to say what you have done. Okay, so when you say what you have done, it doesn't mean like what you have, like getting certificates and all that are not things that you have done. Those are things that you have done for, but what you have done for the society, or like for contribution to development of a particular field. I think that's what is important. So what matters is actually what you can do. Okay, and this is what especially in other countries, what people care about. What can you do? Because people might have so many paper qualifications, but they actually can't do much. So as educators, how do we make sure our students can achieve this? The ability to create, innovate, and do meaningful research for a better future for themselves and for the country. So now let me tell you a story. So this is Professor Alan Townsend. Okay, so he is a professor in University of Oxford. He's a professor of medicine in University of Oxford. So he's a clinician. He sees patients, but he also, all clinicians in Oxford also, do lab work. So he studies about viruses, influenza, and also recently Ebola. You see, so he's an immunologist, and this is what he does. So the reason I'm talking to you about him is to just highlight a story. So he was also nominated for a Nobel Prize, but he didn't get it. But he's like a world-class researcher. So he's an emeritus professor because he's like 72 years old or something now. So he retired. So during COVID times, which happened early 2020, because of his, although he works in the lab and all that, because of his age, he was asked to leave the lab. Okay, and because in the early days of COVID, the COVID pandemic, older people were, of course, vulnerable to getting severe COVID and dying of COVID. So although everybody who were working on viruses continued to work on developing drugs, vaccines, and diagnostics for COVID, all the individuals were asked not to report to work for their safety. So just before he was asked to go home and stay at home, he ordered the protein. There was this spike protein which is incorporated in many of the vaccines. He ordered a recombinant spike protein, and as soon as it arrived, he just drove in, didn't get out of his car, took this protein and took it back home. So at home, he has a mini lab. So when I say a mini lab, what he has at home is a centrifuge, which is used to, spin blood. So he has a small centrifuge and a microwave. So that is all he has at home in his lab, a microwave and centrifuge. So using this protein and these plastic lab plates, the microwave and the centrifuge, he developed an antibody assay for COVID. Okay. So, and this is the press release that I have put here. And this led to a Nature paper. Okay, I don't know if you've heard about journal called Nature, but it was published in Nature. So it is a homemade test. Okay, it's a homemade test that works very well. And and you don't need any equipment to use it because after all, he did these assays at home. So like many countries, Sri Lanka was also in a very difficult position. We had very limited funds, and many countries were finding it difficult to cope with the case laws. What measures do you take? And in our initial days during COVID, I don't know if you remember, all people who were positive were hospitalized. If they got their PCR positive, they were hospitalized. And to be discharged from hospital, they had to have 2 PCRs negative, 2 consecutive PCRs negative. And people were not getting PCR negative. So some people those days were in hospital. There were patients they're not patients, right? They're not sick. Some people were in hospital for 2 months. Okay, there were quite a large number of patients who were in hospital for 2 months who were not getting PCR negative. So, and then the hospitals were getting full of these people, and people were also quite depressed. You can't see your loved ones, you're in a hospital, and your PCR is also, you're being tested so many times, but you're not getting negative also. So this is when the health ministry came up with this plan that if anybody who is antibody positive, antibody positive for the COVID virus, they can go home. Now, of course, that meant that you needed antibody tests to discharge patients from hospital. And of course, antibody tests are expensive. So because of the collaborations I had with Oxford and of course, working with Professor Alan Townsend, he said, okay, he'll send his test to Sri Lanka. And he very kindly provided these test reagents for almost 20,000, 30,000 tests, antibody tests. And this is the test that we used in Sri Lanka to discharge patients, to allow them to go home for the first 1.5 years. So until mid-2021, where we changed the guidelines and let anybody go home, we used his test to send people home. So I'm just telling you this story here, where this person, this scientist, uses knowledge, his thinking capacity to develop a test at home and let the whole world benefit from it. So I was just talking about how Sri Lanka benefited from it. But he sent his test to Bangladesh, to Nepal, to many African countries. So his test was used all over the world. And you see, so this is the power of innovation. Okay. And it's all to do with how you think. And this is something, the type of thing that we want to develop in Sri Lanka. So now, if we talk about undergraduate, because I thought we'll talk about undergraduates here because this is the Lyceum campus where we have undergraduates. And I don't know much about Lyceum campus, but in many, like universities and also in private universities, state and private, undergraduates are encouraged to do research. And a research project is a part of the undergraduate curriculum. It can be, like a science degree, it could be IT degree, it could be whatever degree. Usually, there is a research component. And so all undergraduates, most of the undergraduates who, a vast majority of the undergraduates who graduate from universities do research projects. And in state universities, for promotion of academic staff, you have to show that you've done research, and only and based on the type and the amount of research you have done, you get marks, and this helps in promotions. Okay, so after incorporating so much research, like so many undergraduates are doing research projects, so many academic staff are doing research projects, why is it that Sri Lanka still lags behind? Okay, why has all this not led to an explosion of research and innovation in Sri Lanka? So there are many reasons. Okay, so first of all, I think it's the way, again, we are approaching the whole question of research is the way we have been traditionally thinking. It's about ticking boxes. Okay, if you're going to do research, okay, what is the title? Okay, you have to write the title like this. The project has to be like this. You have to fulfill these requirements for your research. It goes through some, and your research is evaluated in a very tight marking scheme. Okay, and also a lot of people who teach research or evaluate research or tell students how to do research, unfortunately, don't understand research themselves. Okay, so because to be a scientist, to ask the right questions, to find out the methods to answer those questions, to guide students, you've got to have done a lot of research yourself. And it's not just research. When it comes to a lot of things, I think because many Sri Lankans are here, okay, rather than here, because if you're here, then people try to learn and improve themselves. This is one of the main reasons that I see talking to many people where we are today. Now, to get out of this, although we have so many students, student research projects and so on, we can't suddenly get an undergraduate and change the way they think, because after all, they have come out from that factory where you have children who are very curious, who, like humans are naturally curious and naturally very innovative and research driven, but you put them into a mold, you can't suddenly, as undergraduate, erase everything they have, like learned over 13 years and then try to make them into something different, because you actually stop students thinking, questioning, and exploring. For instance, my son, when he was in grade 5 in a leading international school, one of the teachers said that, your son reads a lot around the things and he asks a lot of questions, he knows a lot. But in the marking scheme, we only give marks to these. He might know and his answers might be correct, but those are not in the marking scheme. So he will lose marks. So these are the type of, things unfortunately happen. And another example, when my daughter was sitting for her A-levels, one of the top professors said, don't ever try to teach our daughter anything. Like, I know you know human biology, obviously, don't try to, because for A-levels, the marks are only given for the answers in the marking scheme. If anything is written outside the marking scheme, the answer is correct, but she will not get any marks. So when we are teaching our students to be very focused on, answer driven, or to make sure that they don't think or question, then of course you're killing that ability. So without changing that from the very, like early childhood, trying to change that, the culture of thinking and what is needed for research is actually difficult to have a culture of research and innovation. So we have to navigate ourselves away from the traditional way of thinking and memorizing answers, and expose students for different ways of research to make sure that they answer questions that are relevant to the country. So I won't go on and on, because I think we have time for discussion also. So I thought we can discuss rather than me just talking, which is quite boring to me. We can have a good discussion about how we can change things, how we can change how things work in Sri Lanka, because otherwise we will be stuck in the same place. And however much we want to develop, we will not develop. So, and also, apart from the human resources, it is no secret that Sri Lanka spends very little on research and development funding. So one important thing is the policymakers, who are the politicians, do not understand the importance of funding science. And there are many reasons for it. Uh, the main reasons that politicians are citing for not funding research is the lack of impactful research. Academics mainly do research for their promotions, and after they get their promotions, they forget about it. So they don't think about, okay, this is what is needed. We need to focus on this. So it's all about promotion driven, because from childhood, what have we been taught? It's important. Your marks are important. Your position in class are important. So doing various courses are important to get certificates. So from early childhood, what we have been taught as Sri Lankans is to get points for yourself. Okay, do things for yourself, and that's the best way to help yourself. So ultimately, you're not helping yourself, of course. You're not helping yourself or the country by this very narrow way of thinking. And because of this, although there have been some funding for research, there have not been any return for the investment. And academics only interested in research promotions, and administrators do not understand how to drive science and innovations. So, for instance, somebody gives a grant of 5 million, which is not a lot of money, and then expect scientists, let's say I am given 5 million rupees, and if people expect me to come up with a drug for dengue with 5 million rupees, that's just like a really like a dream. Nobody can do that type of research to develop a vaccine or drug or whatever with just such a small amount of money, because it takes a lot of experiments to lot of research to develop something like that. And also the timelines. Many administrators, policymakers expect somebody to come up with a drug or something else in 2 years. And if you look at our newspapers, every day there will be, somebody found a drug for HIV, somebody found a drug for dengue, somebody found a drug for diabetes after, spending 5 million and working for 2 years. But unfortunately, actual science doesn't happen like that. And this is why we haven't developed. And basic research is also important. So we need to focus on quality rather than quantity, because right now it's about the numbers you have rather than the quality, and actually digging deep into finding what is needed. And in Sri Lanka, everybody likes to have workshops, educational programs with a lot of food and beverages. So that's where we are wasting a lot of money. And again, the graph I showed, where people are not keeping up to date with recent developments in that particular field. So not actually understanding what's going on, but not understanding that things have changed, but guiding others, not realizing that. So I would like to end, and because would be most happy to take questions and discuss this. But if we don't change anything, nothing will change. So if you want to change how Sri Lanka develops, the research culture, go for research and innovation in Sri Lanka, we need to change. So thank you, and I'm very happy to take questions.
Hello.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Professor Malavige, for enlightening us about how important innovation and research-based education is. Just give me a minute, Professor.
I can see that there are some questions in the
Yes, Professor. So many of us would agree with the fact that we should inculcate a culture rich in critical and analytical thinking and communication amongst our students. As we move into the Q&A session, please use the chat feature to submit your questions. And until we get ready with the questions, please feel free to click on the link in the chat feature to complete the post-webinar survey. Your feedback would help us to improve our future events. Professor, we have a few questions. So Dr. Sarah Pereira is asking us, as an experienced person in many areas, you have understood that innovation and creativity matter. What is your opinion about any institutional barriers we have when aiming at transformation in the field of education?
So yes, so that's a very, very important question, because there are a lot of, so if the institutional head or the person or even a department head doesn't understand the value of how to,
Professor, we can't hear you at the moment.
Okay, is this better?
Yes, Professor, now you're audible, yes.
Okay. Yes, I mean, there are barriers at different levels. It could be at departmental level, or it can be at, higher level institutional level. It depends on how much the departmental head or the institutional head understands the value of research and innovation, and how much we need to think, change the pattern of how we do things. So we see, like in some universities, for instance, in our university, we are moving towards a very vibrant research culture, because that's when you have an institutional head who is very aware of research, the importance of research, then there's a lot of support for that sort of thing. So, but when people couldn't understand the importance of this, because in Sri Lanka, especially institutional heads sometimes might think, okay, because academics tend to do research for personal gain, like for promotions, it is not taken as, research is for the betterment of the nation. So I think that concept needs to change, that it's for a wider area. And also in our undergraduate projects, what we do is we want each and every undergraduate to come up with their own project and complete that. But actually, by trying to do a project by yourself, first of all, you can't do a very meaningful thing. And during that short period of time. In most other countries, sometimes what they do is to join a research group where the student learns how to, because the whole idea of doing a research project is to learn how to think and learn how to do something by yourself. So in the undergraduate project, if you're expected to do something by yourself and have, like millions of small things, you actually don't have any impact. So I think it's important in undergraduates to fit into groups or teams where they do research. So that those are certain. But of course, there are many institutional barriers in Sri Lanka which we need to overcome. I mean, but it depends on each and every institution.
Thank you, Professor. Judith is also asking us a question. She's asking us, can you suggest any ways as to how we can change the traditional thinking system of in Sri Lanka, like the traditional way that people think in terms of education? That means you should become the first, and everything is based on assessments or grading system. I think that's what Judith is referring to.
Yeah, so I think it has to start with the young people. Okay, because it's very difficult to change older people once they have certain things in their mind. But I think if there could be young people, I think there are young people listening in today. So what I would want to tell all these young people is, maybe from childhood you have been, so some of you would have been first in the class, some of you might not have been first in the class, but whatever your position, it really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, your class position doesn't matter. The loads of certificates or whatever things you have doesn't matter. It's the ability to adapt, think, communicate, and teamwork that really matters. And the earlier you realize this, the better it is. So because it's the younger population who are possibly listening in, who go into work at universities, at offices, at various places. So and when you have people who understand this, who go into various, like workplaces or anywhere, understand that it's teamwork that matters, communication, adaptability, because in any working environment, it can be any working environment, especially in countries like ours, we all always face difficulties. I mean, there are more times that things go wrong than right. Okay. So, all the time, every day, it's like something is going wrong. Okay. So, or we expect to do something in a particular way, or, we can't do it that because either electricity is not there or that, you see, I mean, I can go on about the problems that happen. So then you have to think on your feet and adapt to the situations. And this is somewhere that, AI and other things, can't replace us, because if you look at all these certificates and things, those are just fact-based. And if you ask me any question and give me, like 2 minutes, I can Google it and come up with the answer to you. So when everybody has, like a mobile phone in their hands, all these things that you test in exams is absolutely useless. And the earlier the young people realize this, and I think young people today are so much better than, all the older generation of adaptability, and they are exposed to a wider world. So I think how we need to change things is with the younger people, the Gen Zs.
Thank you. I think Viraji, Professor answered a part of your question as well, because she also had asked about AI and ChatGPT impact on innovation. Professor, there's another question. In Sri Lanka, so this is Angana's question. In Sri Lanka, students normally move out of the country. So as they graduate or as they get their masters, which leads to brain drain. And she's asking, what is your opinion about how this could be stopped? Is that the best way for Sri Lanka in terms of
Yes,
innovation and research?
yes. So I think brain drain is because of two reasons, as I see it. One reason is after school, like there are very limited opportunities for good higher education. Okay, so so because when there are limited opportunities for higher education, people try to move out. But the other thing is, quite a lot of people have this misguided notion that they have to do a master's and then they can get a good job. So unfortunately, so that we have a large number of people also going out for masters, and they finally do the masters, but that doesn't take them anywhere much. What is more important is experience. And I think the experience you gain in Sri Lanka is very important because, as I said, working anywhere in Sri Lanka is difficult because of all the obstacles you face. Let's accept it. I mean, like Sri Lanka, working in Sri Lanka is like running hurdles, right? So once you're used to running hurdles, it's much easier running, like 100 meters without hurdles. So you're always at a advantage compared to anybody else in the world because you know how to run hurdles. You can definitely run without hurdles. So I think that's a misguided notion. And the other reason is that people think grass is always green on the other side. And what I have noticed is, I mean, some of my students also have gone out, but after spending out of Sri Lanka for quite a bit of time, they understand that grass is always not green on the other side, and there are lots of opportunities here as well. And so it's about I think with the economic crisis, there was a lot of hopelessness and so on. But with all these, there are a lot of opportunities that come up. So if you look at all the innovators, entrepreneurs, and so on globally, they are the people who have found opportunities in difficulties. So I think young people today are very clever at these things. So don't underestimate yourself. Don't think that you need to collect another certificate and do a particular thing just because somebody else did it. Think by yourself and think what is best for you, what you like to do. First of all, you have to do what you like to do, because otherwise, if you don't do what you like, you're never going to be good at it.
Thank you again, Professor. Another question from one of our webinar participants As a prominent researcher, can you highlight the importance of ethical adherence in any kind of study we do as researchers? Since today we have a culture where organizations offer a complete thesis for money.
Yes, I mean, that is, of course, so this is one important thing. You see, I mean, you can't have thesis for money, and I mean, no reputed organization does that. So, and we know that so there are so many people with so-called doctorates from various things, but you know, like, oh,
The
I mean, we
quality
know
of
what
it
these.
is questioned.
Yes, yes. So, I mean, it's very clear when you have these doctorates. So, the so-called doctorates awarded to you, and that is, you know, it's very clear where people got it and whether they deserve it or not. So, I think people can, you know, say that I've got this and that, but again, it's not about what you have got, but what you can do. Okay. So this is where I was going. Okay, what can you okay? You say you got these things, but what can you do, and what have you done? You see, so those are the important things. So in other countries, people don't um, judge you from the qualifications you have, or you know, all these certificates. It's about what can you do and what have you done. So which are the and I think that's the things that we need to focus on. And when it comes to research, of course, there's no question about ethics, and but I think these ethics also needs to be taught very early in life. Otherwise, it's difficult to suddenly put these into your mind when you're much older.
Yes, Professor, I think that's a good point. I think nowadays the education system, I think we have to kind of encourage that more and more. Dilrukshi has a question. I think she's talking about how young learners could be motivated. So her question is, change should start from school. Children's perspective needs to be changed towards education and the outcomes. So not directly going for research, but it's better to start action research where it encourages results and will still motivate young learners.
Yeah, so I think there's nothing to actually change about children, because when children enter school, provided that they haven't gone to a particular type of you know, nursery where they are again, you know, made to do all these things. When they come to school, it's like a blank sheet, isn't it? They're coming like a blank sheet. It's the educators in school make them into, you know, particular things. So I don't think the children need to change. It's the educators who need to change to make sure that they don't try to make every child fit a particular mold. So yes, because children are, if you put a child out, they get into all these naughty stuff, as we might say, you know, like if you let them loose, they will go on exploring the everywhere and improvising, innovating ways of doing things. So which we did when we were young. So I think it's not the young learners who need to change, but the people who teach the young learners and guide the young learners.
I think that's all the questions we have, because I think Aradhana again has asked about the grading system, and I think that was the same question, Professor, that we answered as to what we can do to change the mindset of the parents. I think we've had a look at all the questions. So, dear Professor, thank you so much for taking your time, regardless of your busy schedule. You at once acknowledged to attend the webinar and share your expertise on the necessity of research and innovation in education, which I think most of us need to understand how important it is. I would like to sincerely thank you on behalf of the Lyceum campus. Our next webinar would be on the 9th of July, presented by Dr. Munira Binti Hanafi. She would be sharing her expertise knowledge about digital education, focusing about educators fit for the digital age. You can use the same link to participate for the next webinar. Again, Professor, I would like to thank you for sharing your insights with us today, despite your busy schedule. That concludes today's webinar. Thank you again for your participation. Have a great week ahead. Zooming out from Lyceum campus, I'm Sandhani Uduana.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.